Welcome to another episode of Home Sweet Home. My name is Rod McCall.
And I'm Scott Nichols.
You know, I have been wanting to bring in a guest for a long time. We haven't had one for a while. And because of that, well, I wanted to bring in somebody unique and special.
And you have.
Well, I did. He is very special. So I would like to introduce a little bit of our guest today. And our guest has a unique set of experiences. And he's been a longtime teacher, but he had like you and I, he had a varied career path to get into teaching. And but here recently, he did something that, well, I have to admire. He took a major pivot. I mean, this guy was kind of like you. You know, he was staying in education. He got a master's degree to further his work, staying in the world of education. And then he did a really interesting pivot. And I thought, you know, it takes a lot of courage to not just make a career change, but a life change. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce everybody to one of my dearest friends, Mr. Jon Lewis.
Thank you.
Yay,
Thanks for
welcome,
having me.
John. And you know what? You have the pleasure of being a part of our very first actual video podcast that we're doing.
That's cool.
We've been on.
I'm excited.
Well, we've been on YouTube as audio only. I'm a little nervous on being on camera, you know, people seeing me, because I always have to say that when I hear people's voices on the radio, I have this image of what they look like. But then when I see them actually what they really look like, is kind of like, oh, crap.
Well, the good thing is if anybody wants to forget about it, they can just go back to listening to the audio. So,
well, I hope that
Many of them have what they call the face for radio, right?
right.
Well, yeah, I've been told that I absolutely have a face for radio.
No more.
Dang.
We'll let the listeners weigh in.
So, anyway, so here's why I thought Jon would be a fantastic guest. Is your decision not just to pivot your career, because, well, Scott's done it, I've done it. So, but what makes your pivot really unique is that here you are in your later 40s.
Very late 40s.
And, well, you have a 2-year-old.
2-year-old.
At home, and you're about to add another.
Next month.
All right. So,
Wow.
I just have to say, holy crap. I can barely keep up with myself. So the idea that at, late 40s, we're changing diapers, we're pulling all-nighters with a sick baby. Mm-hmm. I just have to say, yahoo. And so I thought it would be kind of neat, because one of the things that we talk about is, well, the stresses of life, the issues of life, whether it's money, whether it's work, whether it's, the people we live with, the people we work with, whatever it might be. But here I thought it would be kind of neat to get the idea that it's never too late to do something unique, something different. And so anyway, you're okay. And well, obviously you're okay because you're here.
Correct.
But I thought we would.
We didn't blindside you. Right?
We'll save that for the movies.
Yeah, there you go.
But I was hoping maybe we would do a bit of a deep dive into kind of a little bit of history about what was going on and kind of walk us through some of your decisions to be what I would call a very courageous individual.
Yeah, so I'm still in education, still teaching. The big change was no longer coaching, which was sometimes 70 to 80% of my job. A lot of busy weekends. Nowadays, sports are year round. So my summers were always full. Like I would get, and I mean, most coaches, if they're listening, would know that you get a couple weeks in July, if you're lucky, to get those vacations in and things like that. It's pretty time consuming. I reached a point where after a few years looking at it and being like, is this really what I want to do? You know, my wife and I, we were married in 2015, and I have two older children from another marriage. Jackson is 21 and Julia turns 20 today.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I have Benjamin, who's 2, and then little Theo will be arriving next month. So, you know, I have a pretty broad spectrum of age range for my children. And, you know, there were some things that happened over the last 5 or 6 years with my coaching career that made me really think about what my future was going to look like, especially with Benjamin and his little brother coming into the picture. I just couldn't see myself continuing to coach, you know, and I'd probably say about four years ago is really when that thought process started creeping in about, is this really what you want to do? I remember I was at a school that will go nameless.
We do a lot of nameless schools.
There'll be a lot of nameless schools, but it was in the spring, and I was the basketball coach, and we're out on the football field doing football things. I'm not a football coach at all at that time, but we're just doing silly things. And I was just like, I'm driving an hour to this job, by the way, and driving an hour back. And so these were the sacrifices that I was making as I stood there on that football field. I asked myself, is this probably the first time ever that I've ever asked myself, like truly said, what are you doing?
Right.
You know, and I think that started it, you know. And then my wife, when we first started dating, she asked me one of her qualifying questions when we started dating was, if you met someone that wanted to have children, would you be open to that? And my response was, I think the world needs more Lewises. So yeah.
There you go.
You know? And that's, you know, so the plan was probably to have them a little bit earlier, but that's not how it worked out. So, you know, life does that for you. But I don't know. I'm where I'm at now, just being able to teach the free time, you know, is weird. It's weird to have that much free time. How much free time I realize I have it really caught me off guard. And I had a buddy that was coaching, and he got out of it a long time ago. He told me it's going to be weird at first when you have all that free time. You're just not going to know what to use yourself. And I was like, okay, whatever. And then it happens, and I'm like, I don't have anything to do today. You know, I don't have anything to do after school. You know, the highlight of my days now is after school when I go home, when I go pick up Benjamin from daycare, and he sees me, he's got this goofy grin on his face, you know, and he's excited to see me. So that's the highlight of my day, which is, you know, and I got to coach when I coached, I did it for 20 years. So I got to coach some really great kids. I got to meet some really great people, but you know, life comes in stages, and I've exited that stage and gone on to the next stage. And, you know, like I said, the biggest thing was the time, and the best way I can describe it is it was like silence, right? So like the bell rings at 4:15, you can go home.
Yeah.
Right. It's summer.
It's different, right?
It's June. You can stay home. So there's you know, that part's gone. So there's, you know, and I thought I would miss it. I really did. I thought I would, you know, the basketball season would come around and I'd get an itch, you know, like, man, I wish I was out there. And I went to a few games and it did nothing for me, which was another surprise.
Sure.
I was a little worried. I even talked to my wife about it. I was like, you know, Jackson and I went to a couple games over the Christmas break, and there's at one point I looked at Jackson. I was like, "Hey, do you want to go?" I was like, "We don't have to. Let's go to Shields or something, walk around or something like that." And he was like, "Yeah." And you know, I told my wife, I was like, "I felt nothing." And I don't know why it's been such a cold turkey situation where there's no emotions attached to it. So that's been a little different.
So I think that we did an episode recently that was on authenticity, right? Like being your authentic self. And I think that maybe that's part of what plays into this, is because I know from my experience, I shot fireworks for 20 years and, you know, everybody thought I loved it, and it was great, right? And it was a lot of fun, and I had a lot of great experiences with it. It was originally a hobby, and I don't know if the coaching was more like that when you started it, but it was originally like a hobby. It became a job, and then it became just something that, you know, was something I didn't really want to do.
Right.
And I didn't realize it until I stopped doing it. And then people still ask me, you know, do you miss it? No, I don't. I don't miss working Saturdays, holidays, all different kinds of times, nights and everything, doing all that. It's great. Right. And I also go to fireworks shows and I'm like, I mean, we can get out of here. I don't need to be here.
I know.
Right. Like I don't really care to see them.
Right.
They're wonderful. And I have a lot of friends still in the pyrotechnics industry, but it's just not something I'm into anymore.
No. I will say this. I did go to a playoff game. I had a buddy who it was the state semifinal and they had a chance to go to state championship. And I went to that game, but I left at halftime. And
you can get
my
out
daughter,
of the parking lot that way.
And you got to remember, my oldest, Jackson and Julia, they were raised in the gym and the field house. Mm-hmm. So going to games with me going scouting with me was like fun for them. They enjoyed that. And even as they got older, they still liked going to games with me. So I took Julia to that game and we were talking and I said, hey, are you okay with leaving at halftime? And she looked at me and I thought she was like going to roll her eyes, but she was like, okay. So, I mean, I don't know if they are aware of it and are just kind of like, okay, Dad, that's what you want to do. Maybe they understand more than I think. But yeah, I left at halftime. And, I like going to sporting events, and I like, where the school I'm at now, I like to go see our kids compete, but I will leave early.
Mm-hmm. There's a freedom, I think, in that. Yeah. But, well, I tell you what, why don't you take us back a little bit? Let's go back to your early 30s. All right. What did you think life was going to be like in your early 30s? Both, your working life, your coaching life.
Yeah, that was my first marriage, early 30s. I thought that, it wouldn't be long and I'd be a head basketball coach and that I would have opportunities to, win games and, really build programs wherever I went, and help kids, be the best versions of themselves. It wasn't always about wins and all that, but in my early days, that's what it was all about. Mm-hmm. But as I got older, you realize very quickly that it's not always about that. That was my plan, was to be a head coach. Unfortunately, my first marriage was not successful and we divorced. And so that was a pretty rough time trying to get back on my feet. And, I was not looking forward to, dating or anything like that.
No.
Not looking forward to it.
I hated it the first time.
Yeah. And so I was fortunate enough to meet my wife through one of the guys that I was coaching with. And we kind of hit it off and we met a couple times. And that was when I got the qualifying question of, would you want more kids? And so we started dating and obviously it became serious. We get married and it was now that transition period of creating a family with my kids from my previous marriage, and that was tough because, they, at that time, I think we lived in Addison. They lived in McKinney. I was working around McKinney. So I'd have to go pick them up and stuff like that. I will say this. I rarely missed anything they did. Mm-hmm. Games, school events, I was always there. So that never, and we actually talked about that. The Jackson and Julie and I did, last month or something like that. We were just talking about, what Benjamin and Theo are going to do when they start playing sports. And then they were reminiscing on their glory days of Little League and, realizing that I didn't miss a lot, but I was stretched pretty thin, and that's where they would go with me because, Amanda's working or she was doing something and these are my children. I have to. So it was always busy. But with them, it wasn't like it was, it wasn't like it was like a chore or anything like that,
Sure.
Having them with me. But it was a big transition to not have them living with me anymore. And then with coaching. And like I said, I at that point, I wasn't really looking at coaching as like, this is taking away from me. It wasn't until, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years ago, something like that I would say that's when I started like really thinking about, because I had plans to eventually go into athletic administration. I wanted to be an assistant AD or an AD. I always wanted to help young coaches. That coming on, I remember the way I was when I came on. I'm going to reveal something that not many people know, but my first job was a middle school. So I had to coach all sports, football, basketball, track, all that stuff. And I knew basketball, at least a little bit to get me through, but I knew nothing about football. The only thing I knew about football was from playing Madden.
Sure.
That was it, And so
that's what everybody knows on Monday. Too,
I know, right? Yeah, we're all Madden quarterbacks, right? So, but yeah, that's it was a transition. But being able to have that opportunity, I really wanted it. I wanted to be in athletic admin. I wanted to help young coaches, not just with X's and O's, but also how they would build relationship with their athletes, building programs, taking care of their business in the classroom, how they are, and where I'm at now, the school I'm at now, our athletic department does a really good job of that, but that's what I wanted to do. And now those were the plans at that point in time. But again, plans change.
They do. So you brought up a lot of good things here. So my question then is, when did you begin to feel that what you were doing wasn't working and that you felt, well, maybe I need to make a different change? Was there anything specific, or was this just a gradual?
A very specific situation. Gosh, was it last year or the year before? It was a basketball game, and I don't remember what exactly happened, but the head coach started screaming at me about something that it was my fault, but it was something that could be easily fixed quickly, like within the next 30 seconds. And he's just screaming at me on the sidelines, and it's just so surreal. Like, what is happening? Like, is this really happening?
Right.
It was an intense moment. It was an intense game. Obviously, emotions got the best of him. But I remember that night sitting there in front of my computer after I'd done my stuff in the office. Oh man, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. This isn't fun anymore. And that was it. I wasn't fun anymore. It was more, Scott, like what you said. It was my passion, and then it became a job.
Yeah.
And it was just, like the time spent was senseless to me. It was like meaningless. Like why am I here? You know? I mean, like if I'm going to be somewhere, I want to, and I'm working, I need to be working. It needs to be meaningful.
I can see that. Like when you're, when something that you're passionate about just becomes a job, then it's like, then dread starts coming in. I don't want to get up. I don't want to go do that thing. I don't want to get there. And you have to ask yourself, like, why am I doing this? Yeah. And that gets back to that authenticity that we talked about earlier. But, that why is important. Like, what benefit does this have for you, for your family, or for, the kids that you're working with, or whoever it is, whatever's going on. So whatever that situation is, I mean, where are the benefits? And a simple pro and con kind of thing will tell you, oh, there aren't enough benefits to outweigh the things that I'm not liking.
Exactly.
And that are not feeling good. And so I can see that. I mean, that's been my thing with career changes, right? When you've done career change. Now I love the career I'm in now. I mean, I can't see myself leaving this. In fact, I'm working to advance in it, but you recently had a career change where you've now, you're much more passionate about what you're doing now. So
working. Yeah. I mean, it's the career change for me came down to, and I think to echo what you said, John, was the passion was becoming less enjoyable. It was dissipating. The joy, the happiness. There was more I felt I wanted to do, more I could do that I was not being allowed to do.
Right.
And so
when you start taking extra mental health days, you know that.
Well, you know what? Hey,
maybe it's
use
time
them
to consider.
They are there.
What might be other options?
Well, so as you were considering this idea of no more coaching, something that you have done a lot, and it was you were Coach Lewis. And I mean, I knew you a little differently, but for so many folks, you are Coach Lewis. So to take the whistle and put it on the shelf and walk away. Who was in your corner with that? Was there anybody that was saying yes? Was there anybody saying no, really, I think you ought to think more about this and stick it out a little longer?
Obviously, my wife was all on board. I mean, she's been there. She saw I was struggling. She saw, the mental toll it was taking on me. And also I'd been yelled at before on the sidelines, right? I had, and it always rolled off of me. Never thought about it. As a coach, that's what happens. You get in the middle of the game and tension, and emotions are high and you snap at each other. That had happened to me. So this particular instance happens and it really bothers me. So it was more than just him yelling at me, because I love that guy. I think he's a heck of a coach, and he's a great human being. But it was more than just him yelling at me. I had reached my point, and and my wife knew that. And when I told her, actually I told her before my last season started at the beginning of the school year. I was like, hey, this is it. I'm done. And she kind of looked at me like, what? And I was like, I'm not going to do it anymore. And she's like, are you sure you want to do that? I said, yeah. I said, I don't have it in me anymore, And I'd actually had started therapy a couple years before that. And my therapist and I talked about it. And I just told him, all the stuff that had happened. And I said, I've lost it. And it bothers me that I don't have that passion anymore.
Yeah.
And I want to know why. Right. I want to know why I don't have it. And so talking to him, he told me, it was never about you coaching as much as it was about you wanting to help people. And you found yourself in positions where you could no longer help people. And so that bothered you. And that turned into, it just snowballed.
Right.
And I was like, it was an epiphany, You're right. I mean, I'd always felt of myself as someone that wanted to help people out, using my experience that I've had. And even now, I do that because everybody around me is now younger. And it will continue to be that way. Right?
Except here, hey, you're among peers.
Yeah, that's not going to change anytime soon. So, that when he said that, it made sense, but no one was against it. There was no one saying, hey, you need to stay in. I had some coaching buddies that, actually were like, yeah, I get it. And you could ask anybody, any coach right now, and they would probably say, I've thought about it, And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with guys just wanting to stay in coaching and do it. There's some guys that's just their calling. That's what they're going to do. They keep their passion. They didn't necessarily go down the same road I did. And because I'd hit some obstacles along the way that I'd call them speed bumps that kind of push you one way or another. And,
sure.
And so, but yeah, there's no one saying, hey, you should really stay in it. Even my head coach, when I told him I was out, we'd already been talking about it in October before the season started, because he wanted to go into athletic admin too. And he's like, I don't know how long I can keep doing this. And I was like, dude, you could keep doing it forever. Like, you're a machine, but it was more about just not having the passion anymore, the passion being replaced with having to do, right? Instead of wanting to do something, having to do something. So, and then, with the little one and, my older ones starting to spread their wings and fly, you want to kind of be around for that. And yeah, there wasn't anyone saying no. Most people were very understanding. And of course, my wife was definitely
sure.
All about it.
More you time.
Yeah. I think that, anytime that you are in a position where you're questioning things in life, right, it's really important to reevaluate where you are and where you want to be, and kind of to put aside circumstances for that, because a lot of times those circumstances become those speed bumps you mentioned, right? Like, where it's just driving you in a direction and it may not be the direction of your passion.
Right.
And I think that oftentimes those things are related to money for a lot of people, where, for me, I kept doing fireworks because it frankly made a lot of money. And when I quit doing it, that might have been the only thing I missed, but it didn't matter.
No.
Right. Ultimately, it was like, I didn't really need that money. No. So it didn't make a difference. Right. And I never would have thought that beforehand, but I made the decision to leave that profession out of a reevaluation of my life and what I wanted moving forward, absent that money issue. And it's been great.
Yeah.
It's been really a great experience, and I haven't missed the money.
No.
So
Yeah, I took a pay cut, but like you said, it
Well,
doesn't matter. Like if with all the free times, and I that's more valuable than
Exactly.
whatever
Exactly,
I'm losing, right?
we've talked, you and I, Scott, have talked more than once that it's not about the money. In fact, one of our previous guests, Mr. Charlie, said life is about relationships. Everything else is just stuff.
Yep.
And I don't know that when you are a young person in your 20s or 30s that maybe you appreciate the value that a relationship can have. We seek and search out financial security maybe, and in that push, we lose that relationship issue. And sometimes that's, well, you don't realize the cost of that.
Right.
So,
and I'm glad that you have realized that at such a young age of almost 50, like late 40s.
yeah.
Because I had to cross the threshold before I realized those things.
You and me both. Well, we have talked about one of the two things I wanted to visit with you about. And the second one is, well, I think an even more challenging push or challenging change, but we are out of time. We have had so much fun that we have run through our allotted time. So are you okay sticking around? And
Not a problem.
We'll do another episode.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, then, John, thanks for agreeing, to be here once. Now you're, oh, dang. I don't know what this is going to cost me now to get you to stay for another episode. But hey, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. Until next time, I'm Rod.
I'm Scott.
See ya.
Bye-bye.